Hi, I'm Joe Fisher, and this is the last installment in turning the cherry log into a bowl. So you may remember the tenon that we turned last time. I'll now put it in my Supernova 2 chuck and tighten it securely. Now there's two things to be aware of here. The red arrow shows where the face of the jaws should seat against the bottom of the bowl. The faces of the jaws need to seat cleanly against this shoulder. The other thing to be aware of is the blue arrow. It's pointing at a space between the end of the tenon and the back of the jaws. If you've made your tenon too long, the tenon will hit the back of the jaws, and then the faces of the jaws can't seat cleanly on the shoulder. Now I'll go back to my same 1/2 inch gouge. I'm going to start with a pull cut, just to clean up the face of the bowl here. Now I'm just hogging off excess material just to clean things up a little bit, get the bowl running nice and true. Now that that's done, we can start working on the inside. I'll roll the gouge over so that the flute is facing away from me, and make a pivoting cut into the bowl. I'm still using the bevel to guide the tool just like any other cut you might make. And one thing to make sure of when you're doing this cut is to make sure that the tip of the gouge ends up right in the center of the bowl. And I'll zoom out a little here so you can see the swinging motion of this cut. If you have a lathe with a sliding headstock, you can slide the headstock all the way down to the end so that you don't have to lean out over the bedways. And then we'll speed up more of the same. All I'm doing here is hogging off most of the material. I'm leaving everything fairly thick at this point so that we still have support when we cut the rim. Now I've moved the tool rest in nice and close, actually inside the bowl, and I'll take some finishing cuts right on the rim. What I'm doing here is establishing the final thickness of the rim, because once you've cut the rest of the bowl, you can't go back to the rim because the wood isn't thick enough to support you cutting it. It'll chatter and flex and make everybody unhappy. So as I go, I'm checking the thickness of the bowl with my fingers. If this were a much bigger bowl, or if I were more picky, I would use a pair of calipers. But I've become pretty good at using my fingers, and I think it's an important skill to have. So we'll speed this up. This is mostly just hogging off extra material. What I'm shooting for in the end here is to have relatively evenly thick walls with a slightly thicker rim and a slightly thicker base. That'll give the bowl a really nice feel in the hands, and it'll be stable when it sits on a table. Now the bowl is turned to my satisfaction. We'll get the tool rest out of the way, grab my Allen key, and take the bowl out of the chuck. Ta-da! Now we have this tenon on the bottom we have to get rid of. So we'll take the chuck off and put on my friction chuck. It's just a piece of wood on a faceplate with a rubber pad on the front of it. The idea behind the friction chuck is to jam the bowl between the chuck and the tailstock. So I put a piece of 600 grit sandpaper in there and run the tailstock up. Now if you've got sharp eyes, you'll catch why I'm having a problem here. Did you see it? There it is again. Ah, I figured it out. I forgot to tighten the tailstock. So now all that's left is to turn off the tenon. I'll switch to a shorter tool rest so I can get right up in there. Now when you're turning the bottom of the bowl to remove the tenon, it's important to remember that the bowl is only held in place by friction. So that means light cuts and no catches, please. Now I've turned off most of the tenon and I've turned a slight hollow in the base of the bowl. That's just to make sure that the bowl doesn't wobble when it's on a table. I'm going to switch to a detail gouge here. This is generally a spindle tool, but it's very versatile. The long point and steep grind angle lets you get into corners and take very fine cuts with it. It's perfect for this type of work. So now I'll turn the tenon as small as I dare, which is usually about 3/8 of an inch in diameter, or 1/4 inch or so. And after it's off the lathe, I'll saw the little nub off and chisel and sand it smooth. And voila, it's a bowl. Why is he at the bandsaw? Apparently for no good reason. Because it's not plugged in. Whoops. Alright, take 2. What I'm doing is sawing the bowl in half. This is really instructive if you want to know how good your technique is. You can see immediately how thick your walls are, how consistent your cuts are. It's a good thing to do with 1 or 2 bowls over time. And this one's not so bad. A little thick in the bottom, but I've done worse. I hope you've enjoyed it. Join me again next time.